Welcome to Between Two Rooks. Today we're going to be talking about the weakest and the most important piece on the chessboard, the king. Its role changes from the opening to the end game, and this is something that I want you to start to understand. So in the opening, we want to castle our king to make it safer, and at the same time, we want to checkmate our opponent's king. So we may even castle to different sides like in this position so that we may try to attack our opponent's king faster than they attack us, and it all comes down to checkmates first. Everything changes in the end game. Let's take a look at this position. Of course, you know white is winning here and white is winning there, but what you may not realize, you cannot win without the king's help. You need your king's help. It takes two to checkmate, and the king becomes brave enough to walk the board and help you checkmate. And it's not just about checkmating. When it comes to the pawn promotion, your king is the one who should help the pawn take the opposition and make it promote just by becoming more active than your opponent's king. And even when it comes to stopping your opponent's pawn, take a look. White queen is stopping the black pawn from promoting, but to win the pawn, you need to get your king closer to it. To make this king go away, and finally take the pawn on e2, after which you can finally checkmate. So long story short, in the endgame, it's not about hiding your king in the corner. It's about activating your king and making it even more active than your opponent's king. If there is no threat of being checkmated, the king becomes super brave. Who wouldn't be brave without the fear of dying, right? Like in this example, white decided to trade rooks because they thought that was still gonna be a draw. But if you covered my course on Chessable from making moves to making plans, you may know that you need to always look for weaknesses, and that could be a bad pawn or an unprotected pawn that you can attack. So black finds a weak pawn on h2 and goes there straight away with the king to attack it. Check this out. So white realizes that just in time to protect the pawn, but as I told you, it's important to have an active king, and black king is more active than the white one now in this position. So all white can do is move the king back and forth to keep protecting the pawn on h2. Meanwhile, black pushed their pawn and eventually they created a pass pawn, after which, as you can see, we got a super active king that's gonna take this pawn and get another pass pawn versus this one that cannot do anything. And in this example, Paul Morphy was white and he had more material, but black was defending everything pretty well. So of course, let's take a look at this passive king in the center. There is no checkmating threat, so it's happy to get out and help. It gets activated, and in a couple of moves, the position really changes. Now it's way easier with white to play, and in a couple of moves, white is winning a pawn, after which they just sacrifice the rook for the bishop to get into a pawn endgame with a more active king that they already centralized. And let's take a look at this position. The queens are off the board, but there is still a lot of pieces on it. So would you keep your king on g1 or would you try to activate that? And white decided to go for the second option because they weren't afraid of getting checkmated. King of 2 and king e3. And in a couple of moves, after the knight wanted to go to c4, they prevented that by going b3. And after the knight trade, we have king to d4. Look at this. Nothing can check the king. It's perfectly safe right in the middle of the board. And most importantly, it's not being an obstacle on his rook's way to attack the black king. So in the future, white moved their pieces to the king's side and started marching their pawns because the black king could be in danger and white cannot. To summarize, I hope you start to appreciate the power of having a strong king in the endgame even more, and you'll be using it more often in your games. Let me know how it goes, and like and subscribe!